Suceso de la Purificación. Yes, that's a Spanish title. And so the apparitions of the Virgin Mary, these are the apparitions in Quito, Ecuador, beginning roughly about 1594, and then the making of this statue in 1611 with the death of Mariana of Jesus in 1634. So my assertion with these conferences, or this one conference, is that the statue itself and its meaning is the key to understanding the apparitions and whatever prophecies are made. So this is the key. Everybody keep that in mind, okay? So the statue was made in 1611. The initial carving was done by a Quiteño artist, which, by the way, the Quiteño had a specific school of art that was initiated with the Franciscans. Very, very beautiful style of art on par with, Michelangelo, Raphael, and all that kind of stuff. In fact, the King of Spain bragged about how good his artists and painters and carvers were in the New World when the Pope was bragging about Michelangelo, just to give you that kind of a picture there. All right, so the statue, 1611, it was completed, and the carving of the statue is obviously linked to the life of Mariana of Jesus. Mariana of Jesus is a Franciscan Conceptionist nun. She was one of the original founding mothers of the convent in 1575, and she's the one who received the apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Her cause is introduced for beatification. So Mariana of Jesus. The statue is linked to the life of Mariana of Jesus. The statue was finished miraculously. So what do we mean by that? All of the statue was pretty much carved, and the original version of the statue, it did not have woven clothes, or this is actually a dress which is much more recent and very, very beautiful. When we say miraculously finished, Mariana describes the scene for the completion of the statue, where the three archangels and all of the angels were responsible for finishing the face. The artist had gone to the big city, or wherever he was going, I think to Guayaquil, which was a coastal city, which was a merchant city. He was looking for the proper paints to be able to finish the face, right? So he was gone for a few days. When he was gone, the statue was finished by the angels. Now, I can testify to this. I've been very up close to the statue. In fact, I had a very nice gold scapular medal, and I hung it on her finger. And I kind of forgot it. I almost left it there. But you can tell that those parts of the statue are not preserved as the face is. So if I'm asserting the miraculous completion of the face, I would say it's somewhat like the tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which apparently, according to the scientists, has improved over time, especially after acid was spilled on the image, and then through decades, the tilma actually repaired itself. So the face of this statue is in exceptional condition. You see that she carries here the crozier, and if you're looking close, you could probably find the keys somewhere in there, the keys to the convent. She's got this nice crystal rosary. I had the privilege of blessing that, so she's holding that rosary. This is not original, this thing here. That's from the military of Ecuador when they consecrated themselves to Our Lady of Buen Suceso. All right, so she carries the crozier, she carries the keys to the convent. She has, since day one, resided over the abbess's chair. So if you look in the upper choir where the nuns, where they sing their prayers or say their prayers, what we would, if you go to the seminary and you see the seminarians in choir and they're chanting the office of Compline or something like that, that's what we talk about when we say the upper choir. That's the cloistered portion for the sisters, in which everyone else is out. So in that cloistered area, you have the chairs of the different members of the community, and you have the abbess's chair. From day one, when this statue was consecrated in 1611, she has resided above the abbess's chair, and that's because of her own claim that she would be the perpetual abbess of the monastery. So she is girded with the cord of St. Francis, as you see. Obviously, nowadays it's more like the cincture that the priest wears around his waist at Mass, a decorative one, but it is the cord of the religious, the Franciscans. So if you see if you're 100 years old and you saw a Franciscan at that time, you would see him in a brown habit and he's wearing a white cord around his waist. You can see that also with the Franciscans today in the convent of San Francisco. The Franciscan friars wearing their habits. So she's girded with the cord of St. Francis, and the statue was consecrated by the bishop in 1611. So the statue is made of wood, and it was consecrated by the bishop in 1611. Now, as Father Asher and I know, we don't know of any precedent where a wooden object is consecrated. There's none. There's no precedent in the ritual. In fact, normally metal, stone, and persons. So a stone altar, a metal chalice, or a bishop on his head. There's no anointing of wooden objects. So that really kind of begs the question, why was that done with this statue? Initially, also in 1611, the bishop, when he celebrated the first fiesta of Maria del Buen Suceso, her feast is February 2nd, de la Purificación, which is the Feast of the Purification. And in that first celebration, he mandated a novena in which all of the different religious congregations of the city, and there's a lot in the historic center. So like day 1 would be the Mercedarians. Day 2 would be the Jesuits. Day 3 would be the Augustinians. Day 4 would be the Dominicans. Day 5 would be, the Franciscans. And then, you have a lot of congregations very, very densely populating the historic city center. There's probably over 20 religious congregations in a square mile. It's kind of a big deal. So in the original novena, which was celebrated in 1611, the bishop of the diocese, he incorporated all of the different religious congregations to preach on the Blessed Virgin Mary for 9 days consecutively and have special prayers in the church where this statue is. So we said that the statue is linked to the life of Mariana. So the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to Mariana of Jesus many times. On one occasion, she said, "I am Maria de Buen Suceso." Now, obviously, I don't know how many of you speak Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but I study languages, kind of. And, if I didn't know what a word was in Latin, I'd look it up, honestly. And if I looked it up and, that means to attack. And I could get a bigger Latin dictionary and look into the etymology of the word and all that kind of stuff, the origin of the word, its uses. Oh, Cicero used it this way. Unbelievable. Caesar in Gallic Wars, he used it this way. Livy used it this way. In Virgil, you would find it used this way. And you can see all the history of the word and how many times it was used this way or that way, who used it that way, and all this kind of stuff. So Maria del Buen Suceso, it was a title that was not unfamiliar to the Spanish because there was a title for the Spanish at a completely different miraculous event in Spain. So, when Mariana hears the Virgin Mary tell her, "I am Maria del Buen Suceso," it wasn't something that she would have been, what's that? It wasn't anything like that, okay? A title that was familiar to the Spanish. Yet the Virgin Mary commanded Mariana that she would make this statue. And There are a couple of miraculous events that went along with the making of the statue. For example, Mariana was to take off her cord around her own waist and then put it at the foot of the Virgin Mary. Meanwhile, the baby Jesus that she's holding is holding the top portion of it and say, "Oh, hi, Mariana," you know, that type of thing. So Jesus and Mary are there in front of Mariana. So it's made according to her actual height. This dress here on the side, aside from the baby Jesus one that's hanging in front, that's her height, okay? So that is probably about 150 years old. It's a hand-painted dress. It would be the equivalent of this portion of her dress, not the blue portion, which I said the original version of the statue did not have woven clothes. She ordered Mariana that the statue would be made as she looked at the time, and she was holding the crozier and the keys, and that she would sit above the abbess's chair. She said, "In my right hand I carry the crozier, for I desire to govern this convent as abbess and mother." By the way, Abba, you remember St. Paul, whereby we cry, "Abba, Father." Well, abbadessa is mother, all right? It's the other form of Abba, you know, trying to make feminine the same word, so it means mother. She also said to Mariana that the statue was to be consecrated by the bishop with the name Maria del Buen Suceso de la Purificación. The words that she said, "He shall consecrate my statue with holy oil and give it the name Maria del Buen Suceso de la Purificación. It is under this invocation that I desire to be known for the preservation of my convent and its inhabitants." So, that gives you some details about the statue. It gives you a little bit of the interaction of Mariana of Jesus, how these two things work together. So, what is the signification of purification? Okay? And admittedly, anyone who's ever heard Our Lady of Good Success, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Right? Who does? Don't raise your hand. He's a little boy. He's like 8 years old. How old are you? 7. All right, I overshot you, but he's like, "I have." I'm like, "No, you haven't." What I'm talking about here, so I just said Our Lady of Good Success. Did anyone know I was actually talking about that? Nobody did. How many did? 2, 3 people? 5, 6. There's 100 people in this room. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. There's like 6 or 7 people that knew I was talking about, quote unquote, Our Lady of Good Success. I don't call her that, and you shouldn't either, and I'm going to explain why, okay? So what's the signification of the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary? So the title of, as I said, Maria del Buen Suceso, it exists without that second part added. Maria del Buen Suceso, and then de la Purificación. All right? That extra part was added with these apparitions. It has nothing to do with the original apparitions in Spain. It has nothing to do with the New World. It has nothing to do with the convent. It has nothing to do with the perpetual abbess of that convent or the abbess's chair or ruling the convent or anything. Completely different. So, for the Virgin Mary to add this word, de la Purificación, it is a contrasting or distinguishing term. All right, so she did it on purpose, and it means something. Okay, these apparitions and the title and the meaning are very distinct from the other apparition, and the addition of the term brings everything together for the meaning of the statue. So here it is: Maria del Buen Suceso de la Purificación is a name in religion. Who understands that statement? a name in religion. Father, we're all religious people here. What does that mean, a name in religion? So, finding a girl. Okay, she's going to go off to the convent. Okay? I have prophecy. No. She's going to go off to the convent, and she's going to enter. She's going to, Mother, can I come here and stay? Can I join the convent? And she's going to be like, okay, come on in. You've asked to be here. Postulare. She's asked. Postulant. She's asked to be here. So she'll be admitted into the community as a lay woman. Young girl, how old are you? 13. That's how old Mariana was when she went off to the convent. But she didn't enter yet, because legally she was not allowed to. You have to be 15. Anyway, she asked to be admitted into the convent. And then when she was of legal age, when she turns 15, what's your name?
Gianna.
What? Gianna. Nice. I got a Gianna that I teach. All right, so Gianna, when she turns 15, she'll be allowed to take the veil, but it's going to be different from the other nuns. Like if the other nuns are wearing a black veil, she's going to be wearing a white veil because she's a rookie. Okay, that's basically what that means. She's going to be allowed to enter the canonically legal period of novitiate. Right? Novitiate. And when she does, she is going to say, Gianna, when you enter novitiate, you're allowed to take a name. What name would you like? You list 3 different names, and then your superior is going to say, no, not that one. I don't like that one. Okay, we'll choose that one. So if she enters, she's going to say, I would love to be called Teresa of the Annunciation. She likes the Feast of the Annunciation. It occurs in March, and that's when she was born, so she's all super stoked about it, right? Teresa of the Annunciation. St. Teresa is her favorite saint. It's close to her heart. That's why Teresa, I love Teresa, right? Option 2, she's going to go a little off the reservation. She's going to go along with Georgina of Jesus. And you're thinking, okay, whatever. Where'd you come up with Georgina of Jesus? Okay. And then her third option is going to be Mary of the Seven Sorrows. Oh, that's nice. It is nice. Mary of the Seven Sorrows. So she takes the veil, and then the superior, who hasn't yet told her, by the way, and when she finds out, she's kneeling there, and she says to her, you will be called Mary of the Seven Sorrows. That is your name in religion. And everybody else in the convent from this day forward, they're going to call you Sister Mary for short, but Sister Mary of the Seven Sorrows. That's your name in religion. And then when you make your solemn profession, that kind of gets, fixed permanently. Okay? So that's what a name in religion is. So when we say Maria del Buen Suceso de la Purificación, it's basically saying the Virgin Mary in this statue took the name of Mary of the Purification. Okay? But the great event of the purification. Because Buen Suceso, it doesn't mean good success. It means the great happening or the occurrence or the event, the outcome of the purification. Okay, so that's what this is. And why is the purification, so why did Mary choose this? And this is obviously just speculation, okay? I can't pretend to know the innermost thoughts of the Virgin Mary, but I can study what the doctrine of the purification is, and then I can say, I bet you that's why. And, to be able to see, to think, to understand what that is. So why is the purification so close to the heart of the Virgin Mary? It makes us do a little deep dive into this. Why would she add that term, de la purificación? And it is important because The Virgin Mary said that this title would be a safeguard and a support of the faith during a time of crisis. All right, during a time of crisis. So, de la purificación, a name and a religion, it's very close to our heart, and it's going to be the support and the safeguard of the faith in a time of crisis. So there must be something about the purification, all right, as an event. What really happened at the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary? And so, just so it's clear, this is a name and religion. She enrolls herself as a religious in the monastery. She will be the abbess. She will govern. She carries the crozier and the keys. She will receive the court of St. Francis. She'll take a name in religion, and the statue will be consecrated as abbesses and abbots are consecrated. All right, that's the reason why the bishop consecrated the statue, because she's the perpetual abbess. And it has obviously the name, why she chose that name. It has everything to do with the purification February 2nd. So, seemingly the preservation of the faith has something to do with the purification. You're thinking, hold on a second, Father. Purification 40 days after the birth of the child. That has something to do, not in itself, but the meaning. What is the event really about? And it also has something to do with the triumph of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So the real meaning of the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary has something to do with the triumph. And she said, to put to test this faith and confidence of the just, there will come moments in which everything seems lost and paralyzed, and then will be the happy beginning of the complete restoration. So you think of the Blessed Virgin Mary at Fatima, where she says, oh, in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. Well, she also speaks very similarly here in Ecuador, talking about the complete restoration that's only going to come after a time of crisis. So the purification. This is kind of I'm going to try to make this section as brief as possible, because I've already been going for half an hour, and we're not even a fraction of the way done. Obviously, the Feast of the Purification, we understand that as a little bit of a conclusion to the Christmas tide. That's when everybody takes down your manger, unless you're a cheapo and you do it before that. But a lot of people take down their mangers on February 2nd, and they do understand it's a conclusion of the Christmas tide. Now, obviously, the purification of a woman after childbirth, this was a prescription in the law of Moses. So it goes back several hundred years before the time of Christ. And the prescription was that 40 days after the birth of a boy, it was required that the woman would bring the child. Actually, it probably wasn't even required that she would have to bring the child. She would have to, because the issue of blood has nothing to do with the baby Jesus, okay? It has to do with a condition that she is suffering. Now, yes, we know she's not really, because the birth of Jesus is a miraculous birth, and Jesus exited the womb of the Virgin Mary while keeping intact everything. So there is no issue of blood. Yet, with all other women, there is an issue of blood, and 40 days after, you'd have to bring yourself to the temple, and you'd have to offer the sacrifice, which is ordered by the law of Moses, which when you read the gospel, these things were ordered by the law of Moses, and Joseph and Mary, they did go to Jerusalem, and the Virgin Mary did offer the two turtle doves in the temple. I'm going to skip the whole section of why that kind of contact with blood made someone legally impure. With the sacrifice that she would offer, she would be considered legally pure. Okay? I'll just give you a little tidbit. The only legitimate use for blood in the Old Testament was sacrifice and adoration. If it was anything else, like Joe Bob is out in the woods hunting duck or in the pond or whatever, and he kills a duck and it's bleeding, he has to do something with the blood, and he can't touch it. You know, he's got to put it into the ground and kick sand over it, and because the blood is considered where the life is and the soul is. The only use that it has in the Old Testament is for adoration. Any kind of contact with it whatsoever made someone legally impure. That's why the woman who had an issue of blood for 12 years, she was legally impure for 12 years. She couldn't go to temple. She couldn't go to synagogue. She couldn't be around people. If she was touched by anyone, and everyone that she touched, they're all legally impure. It was a nightmare. So, as we said, obviously the Virgin Mary does not have any issue of blood. The birth of Jesus is miraculous, and is that the end of the story? Well, no, it's not. Joseph and Mary, they do go to the temple and they offer the sacrifice. It was the offering of the poor, which was 2 turtle doves. As we said, Mary had no issue of blood, but they do keep the prescribed law of Moses. Now, something else happens, and I think the best way to understand this is to take something from Mass. So the priest, he takes the chalice veil off the chalice, right? He puts it off to the side. He takes the pall, sets it there, and then he takes the paten. And on the paten is the host. And he looks up, Suscipe Sancte Pater, receive, Holy Father, Immaculatam Ostiam. Now, even the basic no-brainer Latin people, Immaculatam Ostiam, this immaculate or unspotted host. Now, the host, we're not really, ostium is the victim, really. When I say Immaculatam Ostiam, do you think I'm referring to the whiteness of the bread? No. Is Jesus present on the altar yet? No. So when I say those words, it's clear the mind of the church is anticipating the presence of Jesus Christ, and that Jesus Christ himself is the victim which we are offering. So, the Virgin Mary, she goes to the temple, and she, by the way, this is the only time that women offered a sacrifice. The only time that women, like the Paschal Lamb, that was a family thing. Daddy and the boys brought that on Holy Thursday. Okay? There was no other time. I mean, there were sin offerings that were made, but they're not specifically female things. Birth of a child is female. Issue of blood is female. Offering the sacrifice, 2 turtle doves. The woman had to do that. She had to bring the 2 turtle doves to the priest, and then the priest was going to sacrifice those 2 turtle doves, by which she would be cleansed with the sacrifice. So, think of Mary offering these 2 turtle doves. Think of the priest offering this. Do you think the Virgin Mary understood that those 2 turtle doves, as well as all of the sacrifices of the Old Covenant, signified the one sacrifice of her divine Son on the cross? Do you think she knew that? I would bet she did. Do you think that when those 2 turtle doves were offered, she was offering 2 turtle doves? I would say she wasn't. Do you think that she was offering what she knew it signified? She knew that it signified her divine Son, and therefore, just as I know Immaculatam Ostiam, which is a white piece of bread that I'm holding out there, and I know it's going to become the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, do you think I know I'm offering Jesus Christ? Or Father Purdy, he's up there, he's offering a piece of bread. No, I ain't offering no piece of bread. I'm offering Jesus. I know this. So when the Virgin Mary, she offers 2 turtle doves, do you think she knew she was offering Jesus? Yes, she did. So, she offers her Son to the death of the cross as the sin offering. She's aware of the prophecies of the suffering Messiah. She offers him at this moment to that sacrificial sin offering on the cross. So, if you're looking for a moment in the early childhood of Jesus Christ where he is offered to the death of the cross, the purification is pretty significant moment, especially in conjunction with the Mosaic sacrifice. Now, you could say the minute Jesus was born, Mary was offering, and you'd probably be right. But if you're looking for that kind of parallel in the Mosaic law, you're only going to come to, and it's actually the only time in her life, you're only going to come to that moment of the purification. The only other time she's offering a sacrifice of her son, where there's an exact thing going on at the same time, is the crucifixion. Stabat Mater Dolorosa. She stood at the cross. So in a way, you can liken the purification and the crucifixion as two bookends holding the life of Jesus and the offering of Christ in time. So, the Virgin Mary is fulfilling a quasi-priestly role. What? Father, the Virgin Mary was not a priest. Well, what is a priest? A priest is the one who stands between God and man, who conducts two-way traffic. Think of the dude out on the road as he's conducting traffic. I remember in the Philippines, they had the dancing traffic dudes, right? And I was driving down the street and I saw that guy from a distance. He's like, and he's like, come on, and he's doing all kinds of moves. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. The light turned. I was like, wow, this guy is great, Anyway, the role of the priest is to conduct two-way traffic, okay? What do we mean by that? The priest is to bring all of the good stuff from God to the people, and he's to bring all of the good stuff from people to God. So he's the one conducting two-way traffic. He stands in the middle. He's that bridge. It's a very easy understanding. So if we ask that question, if that's the essence of what the priesthood is the Virgin Mary fulfilling a quasi-priestly role whereby she is offering her divine Son to the Heavenly Father, and by that offering of her divine Son, she's actually bringing something to mankind, then you realize, yes, she's conducting two-way traffic in all of this. So, and we can also say that the priesthood, this quasi-priestly role of the Virgin Mary, is the closest to the priesthood of Christ. So when you compare the priesthoods of the Old Testament, I'm not going to say the Levitical priesthood only, because there are other priesthood. What's the first thing that Noah did when he opened the door of the ark? He offered sacrifice. He set up stones and he offered a sacrifice. Is that priestly? Yes. Was Noah a priest? Well, he did that stuff. Abraham offered sacrifice. Was Abraham a priest? Melchizedek offered sacrifice. Was he a priest? Abel offered sacrifice. Was he a priest? Adam offered sacrifice. Was he a priest? Mary offered sacrifice. Was she a priest? So what Mary does is actually the closest to the prime analogate, the first in all of these comparisons. Obviously, the priesthood is Jesus Christ, and therefore the closest to Jesus Christ is actually the best priesthood. She's the Immaculate Conception, and she's sinless. She's his mother. She's full of grace. Her conversation with God is the closest to Christ, and how she offers within her spirit is also closest to Christ. Does that mean she had Christ's sacrament of holy orders? No, it doesn't mean that. But when you talk about the essence of what priesthood is, those things she has. What she offers is actually identified with Christ's sacrifice, which is namely Christ himself, which is one of the reasons why she's called Queen of Patriarchs. Because all the patriarchs did these things, and she's the best of them. Okay? What's also interesting here is that Christ does not give his life in the temple. You think of all of the sacrifices according to the old law, they had to be performed in the temple. There was only one place of sacrifice, But yet Scripture is very explicit that Christ was sacrificed outside the gate, outside the walls of the city. So we can say, if you understand that the priesthood, this quasi-priestly role of the Virgin Mary, and that priesthood that she possesses is the closest to the prime analogot, and that she offers within her spirit the closest thing that Christ does, then when she walks into the temple to do that, it's the greatest thing that building ever saw. Does that make sense? It's the greatest thing that building ever saw. I got a few... there's a couple notes I have. Mary knows that the turtle doves have no intrinsic value. It's a pigeon, okay? It's not worth that much, honestly. In fact, it was the offering of the poor, which shows that it's really not that much. I mean, a ram probably costs 5 times as much, and if you were poor, you bought a turtle dove. It's like $5 special, okay? But she's aware that the blood of those victims does not cleanse, as St. Paul will say. She knows that the sacrifices of the Old Testament, they signify and prefigure the one sacrifice of her divine Son. And when the doves are offered, Mary interiorly offers the one who is signified. It means that Mary offers and sacrifices Christ on the occasion. So, is it actually then a great event? The great event of the purification? When you start to understand what's going on. So the greatest event within the temple happens on the day when Mary offers her divine Son. Following that principle that the greatest use of something provides its very reason of being, like, what's a hammer for? To pound nails, right? When it actually pounds a nail, you say it just fulfilled the very reason of its being. That's where its perfection is, right? So if you follow that line, following the principle that the greatest use of something provides its very reason of being. What's the greatest use of your mind? The faith, which will lead you to the vision of God. Faith is vision. Wisdom is vision. Beatific vision is vision. That's actually what your soul was made for. When it reaches that, you will have accomplished what it was made for. The principle that the greatest use of something provides the very reason of its being. So the temple was constructed as the only place on the planet for the sacrifice of the Old Covenant. It reaches its reason of being when Mary enters and does that. Someone might say, "Father, that's a stretch. How do you know that?" Well, is there something higher that happened in that place? As far as sacrifice goes? No, there's not. Moreover, it's not absurd to state that the entire purification ritual of the Old Testament was instituted for this moment. That means Moses, 1,500 years before Christ, give or take, and the Mosaic Law, which was pretty much given by God, and that prescription of a woman purifying herself 40 days after the birth of a man-child is going to go to the temple, which was built for that day, and that entire ritual was devised for this day, 1,500 years before it actually happened. It's not absurd to say that. With her divine Son, she also offers herself. And that's kind of an obvious thing because, when I pour the wine into the chalice and I offerimus tibi Domine, I offer this, I offer to you, O Lord, I got it going on up here. It's like, yeah, put me in there too. I want to offer myself. I want to be offered with Christ. This is a package deal, me and him together. This is what I'm doing. Do you think the Virgin Mary was doing that? I'm going to offer my son Jesus, but I'm not going to offer myself? So she offers herself as well with him. And you know what? Even if it was just herself, it would still have been the greatest. Even if it was just herself, because she's the Immaculate Conception. And you have to look at the interior and the exterior of every sacrifice, right? In what lie the greatness of Christ's sacrifice? Was it that his body, as holy as it is, was on the cross, or was it because it was his spirit of adoration, his spirit of obedience, his spirit of humility? Was the stuff that was going on, his spirit of generosity, the spirit of giving and offering, his spirit of obedience, was it that stuff or the other stuff, which is really more important? You'd have to say the interior disposition. What's going on in Christ's soul is what actually directs what happens with his body. There's a reason why Christ's body was beat to death. It's because of his willingness in his soul to suffer that it happened. That's the spirit of the offering, the spirit of the sacrifice. Why was Cain's sacrifice garbage? Well, because he offered a bad sheep. It was a second-rate sheep. Now, Scripture doesn't say that. Scripture says they both offered of their first fruits. So why was Cain's bad and Abel's good? Because Cain's heart wasn't in it. He showed exteriorly, this is my best stuff. But interiorly, it wasn't. It was hypocrisy. There was a gap. He didn't mean what he was doing. He didn't have that interior spirit of adoration. He didn't have humility. He didn't have any of that. So why is all that important? Because it's the essence of the religious life. To cut to the chase, because it's already 45 minutes. That interior spirit of adoration, the interior spirit of offering and humility and obedience to the will of God, aligning myself to what God is, becoming what God is. That's obedience. That's what's going on in the interior act of sacrifice. That's what's going on with the Virgin Mary on this occasion of the purification. As she offers her Son, as she offers herself, aligning the two, Christ and herself, in one act of adoration. That's really what's going on. It is a great event that happened 40 days after. It's a huge event. And it just so happens that that is the very essence of the religious life. We can say the priestly life as well. So, the purification from Mary is not about being purified from something, nor is it about adherence to some prescription from the law of Moses. It's about sacrifice and offering. That's what it's about, which is a big deal. So going back to this idea, what is the signification of the purification? Mary is fulfilling a quasi-priestly role. The priesthood of Mary is the closest to the priesthood of Christ. She offers her divine Son. She offers herself. And as I said, even if it were just herself, it still would have been the greatest, because she's the greatest of God's creatures after the humanity of Jesus Christ. And we talked about the interior spirit of sacrifice, what that really is. That is the connection with the religious life. So, with the fabrication of my image, not only you or my monastery do I look upon with favor, but also this nation. Very important statement. What is monasticism about? Oh, that's so Sister Mary Sunshine, she can go to the convent and become her little own saint in her own little corner of the world. No. That's not what monasticism is about. Monasticism is for the life of the church. Try to understand that people who go to a convent, they don't do that for themselves. Just like I didn't become a priest for me. I didn't become a priest for me. I put on a religion test. Answer for Father Purdy. How did you know that you wanted to become a priest? One girl got the first sentence absolutely brilliantly. He didn't. I'm like, good girl, you got it right. How did you know he wanted? He didn't. The priesthood is a social thing. It's a social sacrament. Monasticism has a social dimension as well. They don't do it for themselves. Yes, they will become sanctified, they will suffer a lot, whatever, but they actually do it for the life of the church. And so here, she says, I'll look down upon you with favor, but also this nation and all the people in general through the centuries. This my monastery being a support will be salvation for many souls, because I will draw them out of the abyss of sins in which they find themselves. God will be glorified in them. How many secret conversions there will be. How does this happen? How is it that there's going to be all of these conversions? I got a couple quotations from a few spiritual works here. They seemed, the religious, to some to have abandoned the world more than they should have. Look at those cloistered Carmelites. No one ever sees them. What good could they possibly be doing locked up in their little convent? What good could they possibly be doing? But people forget that their prayers, purified by this complete separation of the world, were all the more powerful and more necessary for a depraved society. They hold the world. It's a pretty powerful statement. Along the line of the cross's march, or of the gospel's shining progress over the earth, their prayers sweep down from on high upon souls, their divine prey. Better still, it is their secret but active love which awakens the voice of mercy in every part of the world of sinners. It's a big statement about religious. No one in the world knows the reason for the conversion of pagans at the ends of the world. Oh, look, Nagabagbag, he converted, or whatever his name is. Isn't that great? How'd that happen? For the heroic endurance of Christians under persecution, for the heavenly joy of martyred missionaries like the Franciscans. All this is bound up with the prayer of some humble cloistered nun. Her fingers play upon the keyboard of divine forgiveness and of the eternal lights. Her silent and lonely soul presides over the salvation of souls and the conquests of the church. The nuns in the monastery are presiding over the conquest of the church and the salvation of souls. No one on the face of the earth realizes whence comes the salvation of souls. Production and fertility of the lands. By the way, that prophecy, there will be wars and rumors of wars, and wars are a punishment for sin, right? Why are they not being held back? Because there's none left. There's nobody left to stop it. There's no religious left. That's why it was a great tactic on the part of the enemy of the church to do all of this stuff to destroy the religious. Because he knew that when he destroyed the religious, he just destroyed battalions, worth more than battalions in the eyes of Christ. The production and the fertility of lands, the end of pestilences and wars, and harmony between nations. All this is due to the prayers that rise up from monasteries and convents. Actually, she said that to Mariana. Okay? So it's a pretty big thing, monastic life. Now, this quotation that I read here, how many secret conversions, she also said that. And the quotation does not simply highlight the importance of the Blessed Virgin Mary for the church. Okay? That's not it. It highlights a certain predilection for this monastery. Not only you or my monastery. So yeah, there is a predilection for this monastery. It highlights also a certain need of the religious life for the life of the church. What built Christendom? Western Christian civilization. What built it? Monasticism. St. Benedict. That's what built Christendom. You start to understand what this is about when you realize Christendom is gone, and what are you going to use to rebuild it? You're going to use the same thing. It's a solution. There's a problem today. Everything's gone to pot. That's the problem. What is it in the eyes of the Virgin Mary that is going to be the solution? Why did she choose a convent to become perpetual abbess and to guarantee the survival of this, the survival of religious in a way, of which it will spark and begin the restoration? Why? Why a monastery? The only monastery on the planet where she is installed as perpetual abbess. Why would she do that? Because she knows Christendom was built on the ideals of monasticism, which is the interior spirit of sacrifice, of adoration, of humility, and of obedience to the will of God. And it is only within those virtues which monasticism can instill within all of your souls will restoration actually happen. It's not going to happen any other way. That's the importance of this monastery. It's the importance of this apparition. I think sometimes people, Father, could you get to those juicy prophecies? No, I don't need to. You've got the key now to understanding everything. Yes, she talks about marriage and how that's trashed, and no one gets baptized anymore. That's trashed. And Eucharist, it's trashed. And extreme unction, no one goes there. Confirmation, unless you got this. Everything is destroyed. All sacramental life is destroyed within the church. She talks about that in one of the prophecies. Father, that was a pretty good summary. Everything's trashed. All the sacraments are trashed. We've witnessed that. Are these apparitions so that the traddies can say, you see, I was right? No, that's not what it's about. It's the answer. All of the sacraments in the life of the church are connected to the passion of Jesus Christ. All of it. And when you start talking about the passion of Jesus Christ, you have to talk about the interior disposition of Christ's soul. The Virgin Mary copies those interior dispositions. And actually, they are the interior dispositions of all religious. She makes herself a religious to show the answer, which is the spirit of monasticism, which is actually what we as traditionalists, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep the sacrifice. We're trying to keep what it means. We're trying to have the same dispositions of Christ within our soul so that we can save our souls. We know this already. Maybe we got to jump on all of this. But that's what it's about. But think about how many people who lost it. I can go down there and give a conference to the sisters, and it will be like they've never heard it before in their life. They've never heard it. You can go to you can get new people that come to catechism class. I have never heard that. You know, people that come from COVID, you know, they come into the church and all this kind of stuff, and you're given this fiery sermon. I have never heard a priest talk that way before. And we're like, old hat, you know, that was a repeat sermon from 3 years ago, or something, whatever we're thinking. But it's the first time they've ever heard it. It's such a blank slate. The majority of the world is a blank slate. There's no formation anymore. There's no understanding of these concepts. The new Mass has eviscerated sacrifice from the very lives of people. There's nothing there anymore. And yet that's what all of this about. It's all about. All right, so why is the religious life so important, so precious? So the life of a true religious, if lived as it was designed, because obviously there are people out there in religious communities that actually they don't really follow the spirit of the founder, the original statutes, or the rule even as it exists at that moment. But why is it so important? It's because the religious life is termed by spiritual writers as the life of perfection. Okay? The life of perfection. Now, does that mean Sister Mary Sunshine's perfect? No. But the state that she has engaged herself into is the life of perfection. That's the life that Jesus lived. It's the evangelical counsels, poverty, chastity, and obedience. So, if thou wouldst be perfect, says our Lord to the young man, talking about poverty, but also more than that, go sell what you have and follow me. Follow me. So this following. The religious life, as such, the proximity to God is the greatest, which is why it's called the life of perfection. None of you are nuns or monks in here, and you're not in that life of perfection. Now, that's not a put you down, but it's just the way it is. You become a nun, you become a monk, then you'll be in that state of perfection. And it doesn't mean you became perfect. It means you've entered that life of what perfection is. You're following that path. You're married. You're following the married path of sanctification. You got no choice. She's never going away until she dies. Okay? That's your road. That's it. You know, you don't come into confessional. It's like, oh, Father, I don't know what to do to save my soul. The priest says, well, are you married or single? I'm married. Get out of here, stupid. You know, the yellow brick road is in front of you, man. That's everything of how you become sanctified, right? And it's not the life of perfection. It's not what the saints and the spiritual writers call the life of perfection. Theirs is the highest. It's called that because of the proximity to God is the greatest, and then also because the imitation of Christ is the greatest. So, those who really live the religious life, they enter that state which involves a greater proximity to God. This life is one focused solely on God. It is one of continual prayer. It is one of sacrifice and offering. It is a life that's saturated with the things of God and the language of God. Their life is one of the sacraments. That life is one that is focused on the development of the virtues and the gifts of the Holy Ghost within their soul to the most detailed and finite level. Like Bishop Sheen said, do you know what it's like hearing the confessions of nuns? It's like getting stoned to death with popcorn, all right? They are so finely tuned at the heights of perfection in the religious life. It's one that's consumed with the fire of love of God, life that is dominated by the action of the Holy Ghost. That's what the religious life is about, okay? And when we say that it has, how does all of this happen? It's because of that imitation of Christ, through the evangelical counsels, poverty, chastity, and obedience. Now, I know that when you hear those words, poverty, chastity, and obedience, it's kind of like, what, I can't get married? Or I can't have stuff? Or, you know, whatever. I got to listen to somebody else. Poverty, chastity, and obedience, I'm keeping an eye on my time. It is the life of freedom. No one, I'm sure, explains it to you that way. Sometimes she's the ball and chain. Okay?
Sometimes.
Oh! This is being live streamed.
Wait, let me turn the camera.
All right. What's interesting, though, is that we use that terminology, the ball and chain. Oh, here we go. So the life of the religious is a life of complete freedom. Now, when we say freedom, you have to understand the faculty of the will is ordered to the good, okay? Just like the mind is ordered to the truth. Mind is ordered to the truth. The will is what determines us to the good. It's also that faculty of love, because love has to do with the good. What is it that you see in her? There's something good that others don't have. You know, that's how it happened. All right? So the idea of freedom is attached to the good. When the will effectively operates and it achieves goodness, you're going to say that is happiness. You're standing in what is good. That's the real freedom, when you stand in what's good. That's probably, I mean, I could develop that a lot more, but today we don't have that understanding as Americans, because this is the land of the free, home of the brave, right? We don't think that we don't think that freedom has anything to do with objective good. For me, freedom, for Americans, freedom is choice. That's all it is. So if you want to run into the bank and blow everybody away, that was your choice. Is that a prerogative or an abuse? It's an abuse. Do we call an abuse good? No, in fact, we don't. It's not good. An abuse is not good. Are you free to do that? No, you're not free to do anything of the like. Nothing like that. Freedom, the definition of freedom, is essentially attached to the definition of good. You cannot have freedom unless you have objective good. Which is why all of this garbage, the rainbow stuff, there's kids in here, all of this stuff is actually presented. Do you realize that they're presenting this as a good? It can never be a good, because it is objectively disordered. It can never be that. There can never be freedom for that. And for a state, when we're talking about like the state, government, for them to stop it is the greatest good. They cannot let that happen. That is the greatest good. You as Catholics, don't you think, well, I guess that's their choice. It's not their choice. They have no right whatsoever. None. A state should stop it from happening, not let them do it. That's what should happen. Tangent. That was a ranting and raving. The religious life is the state of freedom. There is nothing that holds the assent of their soul to God back. When you're not married, you might focus to the things of God. But when she's married, St. Paul says this, she has to focus to the needs of her husband, to her kids. So when you talk about chastity, chastity isn't saying, I can't do this. Chastity is actually saying, I'm leaving you all behind as I go up, because I am unfettered. There's nothing holding me back. And because of that, they're capable of ascending to God in a proximity with God much more than anybody else. Anybody else. And, for example, the obedience. What is that really about? It's, I even relinquish to such a degree myself. I leave myself completely that I am not even going to make decisions for myself. And I am just going to comply with all of my interior heart, because I see God in the authority that's above me, so that I am complying with God. I am taking myself and just putting it straight in line with God through the voice of my superior who makes all my decisions for me. And because of that, the soul just ascends to God. And the poverty. You know what the 10th commandment is? 10th commandment, I am the Lord thy God. No, it has to do with stuff. Not covet thy neighbor's goods. Now, of course, when we're younger, we think, okay, the guy next door's got a four-wheeler. I'm not supposed to want it. Actually, it doesn't mean that at all. The spirit of the 10th commandment is be careful of how attached you are to stuff, how much you really want stuff, goods, pleasures, creature comforts, wine, whatever it is. All right? Be careful how much you want it, because if your heart is going after it too much, you will be dragged to the thing. You'll be dragged down. The definition of sin is aversio, aversion. Averto means to turn, so averto means to turn away. Aversio ad Deo, to turn away from God. And then to ad creaturam, conversio, conversion to the creature. That's what it is. That's the definition of sin. 10th commandment is be careful how attached you are to things. So what's poverty? Poverty is to put it all away. I don't have ownership or responsibility of nothing. I own nothing. And because of that, the soul can soar. They are free as birds in the air. They are free. That's the idea behind the evangelical councils and the religious life, which is why they are closer to God. And all of it is wrapped up still in that interior disposition of sacrifice. More blah, blah, blah. Let's see. I'm looking at different stuff here. You know what? It's an hour and 10 minutes. I didn't go over any of, well, a lot of stuff, because it's hard to reduce this stuff. Our Lady of Good Success. You do realize now how far that falls short. It actually says nothing about what this is about. Absolutely nothing. Not even a jot or tittle. Not a dot on the I or a crossing of a T. Does that name, Our Lady of Good Success, say anything about what this is? This is the answer to the crisis in the church. This is the religious life is the answer. The spirit of the religious, the spirit of the councils, the evangelical councils. All of that which is wrapped up in this. There's a reason why she became a nun. To protect all of that and what it means in order to rekindle the conversion of the church. When everything seems lost. And we're getting close to that, honestly. I don't know if it can... I'm just waiting for the next blunder of what it will be. I don't know if it can get worse. It probably can get worse. Although, baptisms for transgenders, I was pretty shocked by that one. I was shocked. But that's what this is about. This is the answer. So, with that, we're going to cut the live stream. Let's go ahead and cut it. It's all right. And then I'll ask people if they have any questions, and I could show you a few photographs, and hopefully we'll go through that quick.